Hello and welcome to the DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf. I'm joined by Riley Fessler and Minna Stein. As usual, the government may be shut down, but we are not shut down. We are here. Um, does Washington feel any different to you guys with the government shut down?
Not yet, but I haven't stepped outside yet. So maybe if I do, I'll feel a sense of shutdown in the air.
Maybe there's no traffic. Maybe there's less traffic. Well,
That
that
wouldn't be
Not
so
any
bad.
more chaotic than usual
that
here,
might be
I feel
that
like.
might. I wonder if the National Guard are shut. Like, do they show up for work? Do they show up for their like garbage pickup work that Trump has sent them into town to do if the government is shut down? We should do some investigating. I would like to answer that tomorrow on our special government shutdown update. But
I'll
why don't we
walk her.
begin?
I'll tell you what, David. I'll walk around the city and I'll just record what I see on my phone.
Oh, that'd be great.
I
That
believe they are still at work, but when I go to the most dangerous place in the world later, Union Station, I'll let you know if I see mobs of National Guard are usually there.
Yeah, New Union Station is. It's like you know Fallujah. All right. Well, I'm sure your first story is the government is shut down. So why don't you get on with that?
How right you are. The U.S. government shut down much of its operations on October 1st after deep partisan divisions between Congress and the White House prevented a deal on $1.7 trillion in agency funding. This 15th government shutdown since 1981 is expected to furlough 750,000 federal workers, halt key services like the employment report, and incur a daily cost of $400 million. The immediate impasse occurred between because Senate Democrats rejected a short-term spending measure, demanding it include an extension of expiring health benefits, which Republicans insisted must be addressed separately. With no clear path out of the impasse, both President Trump and Democratic leaders have warned of a long, grueling standoff that could lead to permanent cuts to federal jobs and programs.
Well, I don't know. I've lived through some government shutdowns before because that's how we do government here in the United States, sometimes and not very well. And these things can go on for a while, and it doesn't seem like either party is ready to blink. The Republicans are desperately trying to blame this on Democrats. Democrats, of course, are not responsible for this. Republicans control the White House. They control both houses of Congress. Um, uh, and by the way, what the Democrats seem to be pushing for is, trying to enable people to keep their health insurance, which I don't know, is that such a crime to be fighting for that? But we shall see today whether Trump follows through with his plans to have Russell vote, you know, uh, uh, fire lots of people or do anything crazy and draconian with the government. And that will undoubtedly produce many lawsuits and much more conflict and many more distractions. But let's keep in mind, they don't actually have an agenda. Trump literally has no more agenda for the remainder of his term. So, this kind of thing makes it look like something's going on here. It's pathetic. And I think a lot of people will feel the pinch, average people who depend on services, depend on people to be responsive to them and so forth. Although things like Social Security, although Trump has said it'll be stopped, things like Social Security are supposed to be paid regardless of the staffing is down in those places, but people are supposed to be able to get that. Anyway, we'll follow this as long as it lasts, and who knows, it may last a while. Minute.
In a highly unorthodox address at Marine Corps Base Quantico, President Trump delivered a politically charged campaign style speech to the nation's top military leaders, proposing that American cities be used as training grounds for troops and urging the military to combat what he called, quote, enemies from within. The 72-minute speech broke sharply from long-standing norms of civilian-military relations, blending partisan attacks, anti-immigration rhetoric, and praise for his own policies, while Secretary Pete Hegseth echoed themes of separating the military from civilian society and denouncing, quote, woke culture. The event, which cost millions to convene, nearly every top U.S. general and admiral, has sparked concern over Trump's vision of expanding the domestic role of the military in politically adversarial cities.
It's easy to look at this event and to be distracted by the elements of it that were ridiculous. The idea of Trump, the draft dodger, and Pete Hegseth, the frat boy, lecturing the generals and admirals of our armed forces on how to do armed forces, pretty darn ridiculous. Trump went off on, bizarre Trumpian riffs about the insult it would be to the United States if he doesn't win the Nobel Prize, or why we should have battleships, or that he likes, he's a very aesthetic man and he doesn't like the aesthetics of some of the new ships that we're putting out. And Hegseth, of course, was off on his usual kind of misogynistic, racist, pitch about wokeness, but it included some things that were not ridiculous. Hegseth, reiterated what has been a theme of his time there, which is that he doesn't want rules of engagement, and he doesn't want to, he essentially wants to make war crimes acceptable again, which of course, they're blowing ships up in the Caribbean without any due process is a sign of that. The most pernicious of this, and I'm not minimizing the racism or the misogyny, was Trump saying that the military should use American cities for training the troops, and that American cities, contain the enemy within, radical Democrats and so forth. I've seen some people minimizing this and saying, oh, this is just blustering Trump. This was a president of the United States speaking to the leaders of our military, saying the military's new enemy are Americans, Democrats, people who live in American cities. It is consistent with a refocusing of the mission of the military that is going to be manifest in the new National Defense Strategy, which is about to be released, which says the military's priorities ought to shift to our southern border, dealing with problems at home, that we should pull troops out of Europe, that we should weaken our alliances, that we should narrow our focus on the rivalry with China to just being concerned with the Taiwan issue and not really as concerned with other kinds of competition. That national defense strategy is also producing real discomfort among national security specialists because it's as reckless as this meeting is. But let's not be numbed to Trump or Hegseth. Let's not minimize this thing because parts of it were just stupid or ridiculous. Having a president calling for sending the United States military into American cities to target American citizens, very likely citizens like you who listen to podcasts like this, ought to scare the shit out of everybody. This is full-blown authoritarianism. And no American president ever in our history has targeted American citizens this way. Not in the middle of a civil war did Abraham Lincoln ever say, we're going after, the average citizens of the South. At no point in our hottest, political divisions in our history did a president say, I'm going to turn the U.S. military on the opposition party. And that's where we are. And he thinks it's okay because he's done it with the Department of Justice and he's getting away with it. And the Supreme Court's letting him get away with it. He's using the full resources of the United States government to target people who he sees as disloyal to him or critical of him. And that's the opposite of the system of government we've got. And I saw a lot of people yesterday circulating the grievances at the heart of the Declaration of Independence, again, because Trump has violated so many of them. Trump has emulated the abuses of George III, or in some cases, gone farther. Don't accept the arguments to minimize what happened yesterday. It was awful and it was dangerous. I have a column on it at the Daily Beast. Go and read if you like. And today, our Deep State Radio podcast will have two three-star generals, our friends Doug Lute and Mark Hertling. And, we will talk about that. Ed Luce will join us to talk about, where we are at this moment in authoritarianism in America.
A federal judge issued an extraordinary 161-page ruling severely rebuking President Donald Trump and his administration for unconstitutionally targeting non-citizen professors and students who had voiced support for Palestinians. The judge ruled that the administration impermissibly chilled protected political speech by misusing a broad definition of anti-Semitism in efforts to deport these activists. The ruling accused Homeland Security and State Department secretaries of acting in concert to weaponize their offices to terrorize pro-Palestinian non-citizens into silence. The judge concluded that the administration's conduct represented a, quote, full-throated assault on the First Amendment, end quote, and violated the president's oath to defend the Constitution.
It's a striking document. I encourage everybody to read it. The author, 85-year-old judge appointed by Ronald Reagan, provided, I think, what is the most extraordinary, significant, and accurate legal critique of the way this administration is operating that we've seen from anybody. And it included an extraordinary takedown of the president of the United States and his own character and his own way of governing. This is, not judicial activism. This is judicial courage to stand up and say what's really happening. And I hope if you read it and you agree, you'll share it with other people, because I think as many people as possible need to see what this veteran, Reagan-appointed, Republican-appointed judge feels about what's happening right now, because he got it exactly right.
The Trump administration has withdrawn the nomination of Dr. E.J. Antony to lead the Bureau of Labor Statistics after reports surfaced of his past offensive and conspiratorial social media posts. His nomination faced resistance from key Republican senators and was never scheduled for a confirmation hearing, signaling a severe lack of support. Despite the controversy, Antony will remain at the Heritage Foundation, while Trump plans to name a new nominee soon.
Well, what do we have to say about this? The guy appeared to have in his office a picture of a Nazi battleship. He was too extreme for even the bootlicking Republicans of the United States Senate. He was a terrible choice. I also would go a little deeper. The Republican Party is getting a little bit nervous about Donald Trump's desire to cook the books, because they are getting messages from Wall Street saying if the United States starts lying about its financial economic performance, it is going to have severe repercussions in markets, including having people turn away from the dollar. Having huge deficits may lead to that. The rise of other countries may lead to that. But the United States not being reliable in its economic reporting would do that as well. So terrible candidate. Bye-bye. No one's going to miss you, buddy. But above and beyond that, there are deeper issues here. And it'll be interesting to see whether Trump is forced to put somebody into this job who is at least an eensy-weensy teeny bit responsible.
The Trump administration issued an executive order pledging to guarantee Qatar's security, including by taking military action if the country were to come under attack. This order was signed just 3 weeks after an Israeli airstrike targeting Hamas leaders in Qatar, which had outraged Qatari and American officials and raised questions about the strength of U.S. security guarantees. The executive order treats any attack on Qatar, which hosts the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East, as a threat to the peace and security of the United States. By formalizing this defense pledge, the order appears aimed at reassuring the Gulf nation, a key U.S. partner, that such an attack by an American ally would not happen again.
Yeah, I think, the Israeli attack on Qatar, on Hamas in Qatar, unsuccessful attack, destabilized the relationship. And it's clear that Trump knew about it in advance, and it's clear he made a mistake in allowing it to continue or not blowing the whistle on it, because it was very destabilizing. And I think he's going to spend a lot of time doing what he's doing in this particular case, trying to patch things up, because, over the course of the past 10 years, something has happened. And that is, Israel has proven to be an unreliable ally, and the United States has shifted its strategic alliances to countries that, like the countries in the Gulf, that are a little bit more dependable at advancing U.S. interests in the region. Not completely dependable. They all have mixed records. We know that. And I think we could, spend a lot of time, doing a critique of that. But what you need to do is you need to recognize that a shift is taking place here in America's alliance. And I was speaking to, perhaps the most prominent commentator that there is on U.S. Middle East relations, household name. And the only reason I'm not using his name is because, I haven't cleared it with it. But I said, who's the most destabilizing country in the Middle East? And he said, Israel. And I said, who are our most dependable allies in the Middle East? And he listed off a bunch of countries, Gulf countries, Jordan, and others, and said, these are the countries that we are closer to now. There is a sea change that has taken place. And with every abuse on the part of the Israelis, it gets worse. Now, does that mean, Trump's not in lockstep with Netanyahu on his plan for Gaza and stuff that we've talked about before? No, he still is. It's a balancing act, and this is part of that balancing act. Does it look, different because the Qataris have, given him an airplane? Yeah, it does. And most of the stories that I saw this morning mentioned the airplane in the first couple of graphs of the story. But for the point of view of what we do here at the DSR Daily, look at the strategic shift. That's important. And I don't see Israel reversing it anytime soon, because I just don't think, while Netanyahu's in charge, they will be viewed as a reliable partner of the United States, or of anybody, frankly, for quite some time to come. So that's it for today. As I said, the Deep State Radio that we've got coming is a special one, so tune into that. We'll have that up a little bit later today. Tomorrow is a Jewish holiday, so Minna and I won't be here. Riley will be talking to himself or somebody else, or his multiple personalities will come out. We'll see. Maybe there'll be a little twist, and then of course we'll be back on Friday, and we look forward to joining you then. I think Words Matter is also being done on Friday for that same reason. Is that correct, Riley? Is it being done on Friday?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So, but there's plenty that you can listen to. We did a good Civil Consciousness. There's, other good podcasts coming. We've got a good Need to Know coming on Friday as well. So join us for all of that. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.